A deed of assignment or a deed of sublease. What is the difference between these two documents? Now, that is what I'm going to be explaining to you in this video, because these two documents are documents that are commonly used right here in Nigeria, especially here in the city of Enugu, when transferring land ownership or property ownership. Now, we'll be starting with the first document, deed of assignment. What is a deed of assignment? A deed of assignment is a legal document that transfers ownership rights in a property from one person to another, which is usually from the seller to the buyer. Now, what are the things that makes a deed of assignment valid? The first thing is that for a deed of assignment to be valid, it must contain the history of the land, which is also known as the recital of the land. Now, this recital of the land usually shows how the ownership of the land started, maybe from when it was still a virgin land till when it moved to somebody, and from that person it moved to another person, from that person is sold to the last person that is buying the property. So for a deed of assignment to be valid, it must contain the history of how the ownership of that land has been going. And the second thing is that for a deed of assignment to be valid, it must also contain the indemnity clause and the covenant binding both the buyer and the seller of that land. Now, let me start with the indemnity clause. The indemnity clause is a clause that is being imputed in the deed of assignment to protect the buyer from the seller's losses or encumbrances that may occur on the land. Now, for a deed of assignment to be valid, it must contain that indemnity clause. Then the number three thing is the covenant. These are the agreements that is binding both the buyer and the seller. So it usually contains what the seller agrees to perform to the buyer, and also the agreement that the buyer has agreed to keep on the property. So it must contain the covenant between the buyer and the seller. And then finally, it must contain the signatories and witnesses of both parties. So it must contain the signature of the buyer and his witness, and as well contain the signature of the seller and his witness. So for a deed of assignment to be valid, like number one, I said it must contain the history of the land, as well as the names of the both parties that are going into that land transaction or property transaction. Then number two is that it must contain the covenant, that is the agreement between the buyer and the seller. Then number three, it must contain the indemnity clause, and I forgot to mention that it must contain the consideration of the land, and as well contain the signatories of both parties involved in that land transaction. So these are the things that makes a deed of assignment valid. Now you'll be asking, when is deed of assignment being issued? So mostly deed of assignment is supposed to be issued when a property has a C of O. So when a property has a C of O, a deed of assignment is supposed to be issued, since that a C of O is a certificate that is being issued once in a property. So if you are reselling that C of O property, you're supposed to assign what you have on that C of O property to the person that is buying it. So when a C of O is being issued, when a deed of assignment is being issued, is when a land already has a C of O. But right here in Enugu, what is obtainable is that most times, whether a land has a C of O or not, you get a deed of assignment, right, which still stands right here in the city of Enugu. But how it's supposed to be is when a land has a C of O, then a deed of assignment should be issued. Hope you are clear on the deed of assignment. Now we are going to the side of a deed of sublease. Now, a deed of sublease is a legal document that transfers the residual years of a particular land to the person that is buying it. Now, from the seller of that particular property to the person that is buying it. So here is what I mean. Let's take, for instance, a seller of a property has stayed on a land for, say, 5 years, and he has a deed of lease on that land. Now, remember, according to the Land Use Act of 1978, that all land belong to the state government and it is being held in trust by the governor of that particular state, which means that according to the Land Use Act, you are just supposed to occupy the land for the period of 99 years. And after 99 years, maybe you could renew your ownership on the land. So that is where deed of lease or deed of sublease comes to play. Naturally, lease as a term is used for rents that are above 3 years. So if you are staying on a property above 3 years, the document that is supposed to be prepared on that particular property is a deed of lease. But right now, for a land, it means that they're leasing a particular property for you for the period of 99 years. Also note that whether you're holding a deed of assignment, a deed of sublease, you are still a tenant on a land for the period of 99 years. Now, when you hear deed of sublease, it means that the ownership on that land or the title on that land is a lease. So if the person is reselling, the person will be giving you a deed of sublease. So a deed of sublease now means that it transfers the ownership of the remaining years that the person has on that land down to you that is buying. So it transfers the remaining years of the seller to the buyer. So let's take, for instance, somebody is using a land for 5 years and he has a period of 99 years to use. So he used that land for 5 years and decided to resell it to another person. What will be prepared is what? A deed of sublease. Since he already has a deed of lease on the land, a deed of sublease will be prepared, transferring 99 minus 5 years is 94. So they'll be transferring the remaining 94 years down to you that is buying. So that is what a deed of sublease means. What makes a deed of sublease valid? The deed of sublease is valid when it contains the residual years, that is, the number of years that is remaining on that land. It carries the same components which I mentioned in the deed of assignment on the deed of sublease. Now, right here in Enugu, the deed of sublease or a deed of lease or a deed of assignment, they are just terms that are being used to transfer ownership. They are all stating one thing. When you read a deed of assignment that is prepared in Enugu, and you read a deed of sublease that is prepared in Enugu, and you read a deed of lease that is prepared in Enugu, you see that they are the same thing, because all of them, they do not used to specify the number of years. They are going to stay on the land for 30 years or 40 years. They are just the same thing. So in case you are buying land in Enugu and you are being issued a deed of lease, don't be in a hurry to panic. Instead, read through the deed of lease. If there's a number of years stated to you, you know that you are getting the real deed of lease. If not, just stay calm. It is just the term they know, right? Before now, Enugu is used to using deed of lease and deed of sublease as a title document. So when you are buying land in Enugu or property in Enugu and you see deed of sublease, don't panic. Just read through it. Now you see that the details in it are most times like that of a deed of assignment. So whether you're getting a deed of assignment, a deed of lease, or a deed of sublease right in Enugu, ensure it has these following components. Number one, it contains the name of the person selling and then the address of the person selling. It will also contain the name of the person buying and the address of the person buying and the plot and the location of the property. Number two is that it must contain the reciter, which I explained to you, that is, must contain the history of the land, the background of the land, how the land got to this point. Number four is that it must contain the indemnity clause and as well the covenants, which I told you, the agreement binding the both buyer and the seller. And finally, it must contain the signatories of both parties and their witnesses. So these are the major components that you need to see in both a deed of assignment and a deed of sublease. Hope you understood this clearly. So let me know in the comment section if a deed of assignment and deed of sublease is clear to you. If you have questions around deed of assignment or title documents or land documents used here in Nigeria, especially here in the city of Enugu, drop it at the comment section and we will answer you gladly. Until I come to your face again, I remain Jacinta Okwa, your real estate investment expert working with Browdy Global Limited. See you in the next one.